Let's start now. So I will introduce you to SAP program, the Foundry program by SAP. Who doesn't know about SAP or SAP? It's a renowned MNC software corporate. SAP runs accelerator programs via 8 global foundries, and they charge zero equity. It accelerates 16 cohorts of startups every year. The SAP IU Foundry in Singapore is the only accelerator program run by SAP in Asia. It is very useful for B2B enterprise software companies. SAP also has a fund which invests in early stage enterprise software startups. You can apply for the same at www.sap.io. Stephen Tong with us heads SAP IO Foundry in Singapore. He has invested in 45 fintech and digital health startups. He has been instrumental in driving startup growth at Rainmaking Innovation, Startup Bootcamp, and others. So welcome, Stephen, to Fundcubation series by FundTQ, where we share the learning of incubators and accelerators across the globe.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And maybe just a quick note. So SAP, we actually have 2 foundries in Asia, one in Singapore and another one in Tokyo. But of course, the Tokyo foundry will be focused on the Japanese market, whereas Singapore, we focus on Southeast Asia and for the moment, India as well.
Sure. So thanks a lot for correcting us. I think that is a valuable input. So let's come to the questionnaire that we wanted to ask some from you. So
sure.
What do you see overall outlook of startup ecosystem globally after COVID? And especially, how do you see an Indian startup ecosystem globally?
Sure. Now, the way I view it is more or less linked to the overall economy, right? Because like it or not, you cannot decouple the two. And, I think what we have now is a very unique situation where we have both a demand shock and a supply shock. I'm not even sure when was the last time anything like that happened in human history. Maybe, I don't know, in the Spanish flu era. So we're talking about a very unique situation here, which, to be frank, I think a lot of economists are still trying to work out what's going to happen in the larger world. But the way I view it, some startups will definitely thrive, right? Especially those that are going to provide solutions that can, solve some of the problems created or some of the new opportunities created by the COVID-19 situation. Some will inevitably fail, especially those in the travel industry. Right? I think this is going to be a very badly hit industry. Even big companies will struggle. And I think startups, given less resources, it could be very bleak for them. So we'll see what's going on. But I guess this is a situation I think the whole world is still trying to come to terms with.
Sure, that's wonderful. And so you said that travel industry, etc., will not. So in Indian ecosystem, do you see many Indian startups coming to that accelerator program?
Oh, actually, we do have alumni from India, right? So we have an alumni that's based in Bangalore. And we do actively source for startups from India when we are, in the midst of looking for startups that may be a fit for our new program. So India, to me, is a very important startup ecosystem. Good startups, fairly global. Right? More and more, I find startups that are addressing not only the Indian market, but they aspire to be a global startup, which is great compared to a couple of years ago. And I think compared with some of the other startups in Southeast Asia, Indian startups, I think they do a lot more things that are more difficult. For example, enterprise software. It's not a simple website. Right? You do need some level of expertise in it, and you do find plenty of that in India.
Sure. So what do you think, Stephen, what would be the COVID impact on valuations? Are the VCs, and especially the SAP fund,
are
they safe in investment space, or are they still investing?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Now, to me personally, and I do not speak for SAP in this sense, I personally feel that coming into this crisis, valuations are already way overstretched, and we can see that in some of the startups that went IPO recently, reduction in valuations, right? And now, given the crisis that we are or the pandemic that we are in right now, I think it's almost inevitable that certain valuations will be hit extremely badly. And you hear stories that even a well-known unicorn like Airbnb that was planning to go public this year, some of their investors are already slashing their own take on how much Airbnb is worth. So if something like that can happen to Airbnb, you can bet that a lot of other startups will be impacted. Then again, right, if your startup is doing something like what Zoom is doing right now, right, where it's in hot demand, your valuations could very well go through a roof, right, simply because of the situation that it is now. But on the whole, I do think that it's healthy for the ecosystem for the evaluations to correct a little bit versus the bubbly landscape that we were a couple of months ago.
Perfect. I think that is valuable. So, Stephen, during the journey, you have seen a lot of startups coming to the accelerator programs, and before that, you were working with Rainmaking and Startup Bootcamp. You must have seen some startups growing, some failing. What are the key learning from startups which failed, and what were you feel that the reasons? Because an aspiring founder could learn from it.
Sure. To me, the number one reason you can always attribute it to an inability to generate enough revenue. Right. I think that is probably the most important thing in business. Right. You must generate revenue, and the startups that fail inevitably fail to do that. Now there are a lot of reasons why they fail to do this. Sometimes it could be because they do not have a product market fit. Whatever that they were doing may not match the requirements of the market, and hence customers are not buying. Sometimes it could be because of the competency of the founders. The founders may not have enough experience in the industry that they were serving, and hence, they may not be able to adjust to the market demands there. And sometimes it's also because of internal issues, again, linked to the founder's competency, may not be managing the company well, may not be directing resources to the areas that matter, right? Misallocation of the funding that they have on certain things that may not be so important, right? And sometimes it just boils down to pure bad luck. It could be because of personal problems and conflicts with their co-founders. I mean, these are things that are a little bit difficult to foresee, but we have seen that, and it's unfortunate. But the company just had to shut down because of some of these issues.
I agree, and that is very valuable. I think the aspiring founders will learn from it that should not commit such kind of mistake. And I think there the accelerator programs find their positioning. And so what do you think, what are the benefits of having a venture in Singapore versus other countries? And where does the SAP IO Foundry or SAP IO Foundry positioned? So what is the USP of SAP IO Foundry over other accelerators?
Sure. So Singapore, right? I think we have done pretty well over the years to position ourselves as one of the key startup hub in Asia, and that definitely the key one in Southeast Asia. Now, Singapore is a small country, right? I mean, you do not come to Singapore to do a startup for the market. It's insignificant. I mean, India is at 1 point something billion population. You will go to a big market like that, right? But you come to Singapore because you want to start a company in a place, low taxation, good benefits for the companies, rule of law, so you can be sure that whatever that you're doing here can be protected, and access to very international and diverse talent. I think that is something that few startup ecosystems, at least in Asia, are able to provide. Number two, because of the fact that Singapore is a small market, you are always forced to be global or at least regional from day one, right? Versus you're starting out in a big country like India. To be frank, if you do out in India, you can easily go IPO. You don't really need to go elsewhere, right? But you can't do that in Singapore. So there's there are some pros and cons as well. But it's good that you start being global because hey, instead of serving Southeast Asia, why not serve the world? Right? The internet it now enables that, and you can become a global company from anywhere, especially in Singapore, where you have good internet connections and good infrastructure. Now, in terms of SAP IO, we set up in Singapore precisely of these reasons. Right? Southeast Asia is a growing economy, and our Asia Pacific headquarters is in Singapore. So it makes sense that we have a Foundry that's based here to help startups that are interested to scale in Southeast Asia. I think then we are quite uniquely placed to work with these companies. Now, in terms of what we offer, we are not really your typical accelerator. So in the sense that, number one, we do not offer you funding, neither do we take any equity from you. So why do people come to us? The startups want to work with us because at the end of the day, we only want to achieve two outcomes with them. Number one, integrate their solutions with SAP. Right? And number two, we help them to go to market via our very large customer base in the region and even the world. Right? So we are actually in the market to serve scale-ups. Companies that have created their product, have launched, have customers, and are ready to grow. I think then this would be a very good fit for us. Right? If you are still very early, sorting out your value proposition, your product may be still in beta stage, I think it's better if you focus on building up your business before coming for a program like ours, which isn't really suitable for very early stage companies.
Great, pretty good. Thanks. So what is the criteria for shortlisting by SAP IO Accelerator program? And
sure.
So during this physical distancing, how do you plan to run the accelerator program?
Yeah, great question. And in fact, when we started recruiting for our cohort, never did we expect that we would go virtual, but there we are fully virtual. But maybe let me touch on what we are looking out for. So every time we start a new cohort, there will always be a new team, an industry team, right, that we are looking out for. So this time around, we are focusing on Industry 4.0, which are mainly looking for startups with smart manufacturing or digital supply chain kind of solutions. Right. Next time around, we will focus on some other team that we will announce in due course. But that's how our foundries work. So when we are looking for startups, number one, there must be a fit with the team that we are running. Right. Number two, of course, like what I've mentioned earlier on, the product must be out there. You preferably should have some customers or some proof points that you are in business and ready to scale with a company like SAP. And number three, to avoid conflict of interest, we are very careful to vet the startup's product. Right? If there's any conflict in terms of product features or value proposition, then it's best that we don't even work together because we do not want to be in a situation where the startup may not be happy that hey, why are you doing something that we are doing, but or no, we are not able to help them as much because of some conflict, right? So these are the things that we are really looking out for. Because we do not take equity, we don't look into things like total addressable market, founder quality, and all that. I mean, that's really not important for us because we're not investing in startups. But however, we are investing significant resource to help the startup to grow. So the product, and the achievements of startup more or less speak for itself. Right? And to be frank, the founders that join us, they are all great individuals that I think we would probably want to invest if we are in investment mode, but that's not the key focus for us. As to the virtual question, the interesting thing is we have been operating virtual from day one since our program started a couple of months ago, and even our demo day that's coming up in June, it'll be fully virtual as well. We were rather concerned that there will be some loss of productivity, right? But to be frank, there isn't any, right? And a lot of the experts that we bring in, they are located all over the world anyway. So we'll have to bring in on calls, and stuff like that. It's just that now all of us, right, including the startups, are all online. And that's great. I hope that one day I will be able to meet the startup founders that we're working with in person. Until that day comes, I think we are doing fine. Yeah.
Sure. So, how can startups, if we talk about Indian market or Dubai market, how can startups connect with you and apply for the programs? And do they need to travel to Singapore, or is it that they can join a virtual program? And how does the process happens now during the COVID that we see
Sure.
3 or 4 months from
Sure.
now?
So whenever we have a new program, we will sort of make an announcement and make it clear what is it that we are looking out for, right? So once it is clear, to be frank, a lot of times while we welcome open applications, I actually do a lot of scouting to reach out to startups that I think would be a good fit for us. And it's probably better in that sense because number one, we will have vetted the startups when we do an outreach, right? And if you are a startup that have already launched, have raised funding, all that, it's probably not that difficult for us to be able to find you. Now, there are always startups that drop through the gaps, right? And in that kind of situation, I can only pray that hey, they saw our announcement and they can just apply to us, right? But once we get all the application, or once I have had an opportunity to speak with them over a call, we then run them through our vetting process, right? In the sense that the product must make sense, align with our program objectives, no conflict, so on and so forth. And then we make a call on inviting the best startups to attend our selection days, where again, our product experts from all over the world will hold one-on-one discussions with the startups to just make sure that there's a really good fit with SAP. And the final 5 to 10 startups will then be invited to join the program. Now, in the normal world, while we do not require startups to stay 3 months in Singapore, we do want them to travel here for key events or activities. Right now, given that travel is probably a luxury or not so possible nowadays, for the next program, it could be very well possible that it could continue to be virtual because we really don't know what the situation is going to be like, right? And given that we have managed to be very productive in this period, even though it's fully virtual, all our goals are still being achieved. I do not see any big impact. Right? But of course, if when the world comes back to normal, obviously we would like the startup to come to Singapore for a face-to-face demo day. If that happens again, have a chance to meet with our colleagues, the customers that we want to expose them to. I think these are opportunities where face-to-face meetings probably would still work better than a virtual one. But if it happens, that's great. If it doesn't, I don't think there's a big loss.
Sure. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, at the last, we would like to ask that what is your message for aspiring founders during this period when bonuses are low, there are layoffs? So, what do you think? Is it the right time to start their venture, or anybody should wait for the lockdown to get over and the market to stabilize?
Sure. To be frank, I mean, there's no best time to start a venture, right? But if you look back in history, a lot of the unicorns today, like the Ubers, Airbnb, they were started in the great financial crisis. Why is that? It's because in every crisis where there are plenty of problems arising, right? You also see plenty of opportunities to bring in new solutions that can disrupt. In COVID-19, I mean, there's a joke going around, and I think it's true that it's going to be a great push, for legacy industries, these industries that may not be so digitized yet, to go for full-scale digital transformation. And if your idea has something to help with digital transformation of companies in various industries, this could very well be the best time for you to start, man. Right? Companies are looking out for solutions to help resolve their problems. And if you have really something great, something innovative, I think you probably will be in a much better time to find customers versus the good times where there's no real push to change things, right? So yeah, just continue looking at the problems that are around the world, and think about how you can help to solve them. That's my best advice for startups that are looking to launch, in this COVID-19 pandemic.
Thanks a lot. That's a very valuable advice, Stephen. And what do you want to talk about FundTQ? FundTQ, you realize, is a fundraising platform. So, what do you see technology intervention in fundraising entire program? Do you feel there is a relevance of technology intervention in entire fundraising program, and that would provide visibility to all the accelerator incubators and investors?
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about you guys, and I think that definitely it'll be a good value proposition for founders that are embarking on their fundraising round, right? I mean, some a system, a platform that can provide some guided process, right? Provide visibility to investors are going to do their due diligence, having all the necessary documentation, all that in place. I mean, that's a lot of work actually. And if there's a way to streamline that, hey, I think it improves the productivity of founders and investors significantly, right?
Sure, perfect. Any other thought, Stephen? Because I think some questions I was asking from you, but any other thought that you feel that could, drive the positivity in the startup ecosystem? Any other last message you would like to give?
Sure. I think in this, for the startups that have already launched, I recognize that this is a very stressful time, right? And while certain cost cutting will be necessary, I think what I would advise everyone is, you must focus on your customers, right? Your customers are ultimately going to be the ones that are going to help your startup survive and grow, right? If you take your foot off, no, you're not developing your products to meet your customers' needs, you're not helping your customers at the same time, I think it doesn't matter. Even if you can survive this pandemic, right? You probably will not be able to do well or be able to grab the new opportunities that will come along.
Sure, Stephen. Sure. And how can anybody contact you personally by LinkedIn or through your website? Can you give a little bit of highlight?
Yeah, I mean, you want to reach out to me, connecting with me via LinkedIn will be best, right? I do try to reply people who message me. I get a lot of nonsensical messages, to be honest. Some that I ignore, right? Like people asking me to take a certification and selling me stuff, right? But hey, look, I mean, if you are genuinely asking for some help and all that, and something that I'm in a position to help with, yeah, sure. I mean, I'll be glad to have a conversation with you, right? If you are interested to apply for our programs, all the information are actually online, right? And yeah, just look out for what we're doing, right? Not only in Singapore, but in our different foundries around the world. Right? Sometimes we do not run an industry team that could be a fit for you in Singapore, but hey, our colleagues in Berlin and San Francisco, they could be running something that will be a better fit for you guys, right? So the good thing is we are a global organization. There's always something that could be a fit for you somewhere.
Agreed. So Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the webinar. I think it was very helpful. And for any information, you can log into sap.io. Stephen's profile is there on LinkedIn as well on the website. And you can apply for the cohort and connect with him. It is, again, one of the renowned that any B2B SaaS softwares could, leverage that kind of networking. And all the best, Stephen. And
absolutely,
stay
thank
safe.
You so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. Bye.
Stay safe and healthy too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.